for us. At over 2 million light-years away, it seems distant now, but it's moving closer at 250,000 miles per hour. In about 4 billion years, it will collide with the Milky Way. Don't worry, stars are so far apart most won't hit each other, but gravity will twist both galaxies into a new giant, Milkomeda. The night sky will be spectacular, if Earth still exists. 2 galaxies, 1 cosmic dance, and we're part of it. Like if you learned something, subscribe to see future content, share to support the channel. The sun, our life giver, will one day become our destroyer. In about 5 billion years, it'll run out of fuel. And when it does, it won't go quietly. First, it swells into a red giant, big enough to engulf Mercury, Venus, and yes, even Earth. Mountains will melt. Oceans will vaporize. The Earth will be consumed. Not with a bang, but a cosmic burp. And in the end, only a ghost of our star remains. Hit follow if you love the brutal beauty of space.
The American Civil War. A brutal conflict that shaped the soul of a nation. This is the story of how the United States of America tore itself apart, and what it took to stitch itself back together. It is a war still misunderstood, still debated, and still alive in the conscience of a country it nearly destroyed. This war was not inevitable, but it was years in the making. It was not simply North against South. It was economy against economy, future against past, and freedom against bondage. Slavery had become the spine of the Southern economy. It was embedded in every law, every institution. Millions of black men, women, and children were considered property. They had no rights, no voice, no protection. Meanwhile, the North was changing rapidly. Factories were rising. Immigrants were pouring in. Cities were growing. There were still racists in the North. But the North did not depend on slavery to survive. And more people were calling for its end. Laws tried to calm the storm. The Missouri Compromise admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as free. The Compromise of 1850 included the Fugitive Slave Act, angering many in the North. The Kansas-Nebraska Act opened new lands to slavery by popular vote. Bleeding Kansas erupted in violence. It became clear compromise was failing. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision declared that no black person could ever be a citizen. That decision struck like thunder. It confirmed to millions that the system was deeply corrupted. Then came John Brown, an abolitionist who believed slavery would only end through bloodshed. In 1859, he led a raid on a federal armory at Harper's Ferry. He wanted to spark a slave revolt. He failed and was executed.
China's story is one of the oldest on Earth.
But in death he became
From ancient dynasties to modern empires, its rise shaped the world. It is a land of invention, war, and revolution.
The election of 1860
of emperors, philosophers, and power struggles that echo into today.
Abraham Lincoln won the presidency.
This history includes every major region and island it has ever influenced.
The South panicked.
The full, complex journey is being told like never before.
Slavery outright.
Our cinematic documentary is uploading soon. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.
10 more
China's story is one of the oldest on Earth.
In early 1861, they
From
formed
ancient
the Confederate
dynasties to
States
modern
of America.
empires, its rise shaped the world.
They elected Jefferson Davis.
It is a land of invention, war, and revolution.
And they began seizing federal
of emperors,
property
philosophers
within their borders. Then came Fort Sumter, a Union fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. Confederate forces surrounded it and demanded surrender. When the Union refused, they opened fire. The American Civil War had begun. Many believed the war would last weeks. Instead, it lasted 4 years. It became a grinding, bitter, and costly struggle. At the First Battle of Bull Run, Union troops panicked and fled. It was a wake-up call. The South would not be easily defeated. At Antietam, over 23,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. It remains the bloodiest day in American history. The dead lay in rows, unburied, untouched. The scale of death was staggering. Gettysburg saw 3 days of fighting and over 50,000 casualties. It marked the high water mark of the Confederacy. After Gettysburg, the South would never again launch a major offensive in the North. In the West, Union forces captured New Orleans and took control of the Mississippi River. General Ulysses S. Grant laid siege to Vicksburg and starved the city into surrender. This cut the Confederacy in half. General William Tecumseh Sherman then began his march to the sea. He destroyed railroads, burned crops, and tore through Georgia. He practiced total war, aiming to break the South's ability and will to fight. Meanwhile, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were free. It did not immediately end slavery. But it changed the purpose of the war. Now the Union fought not only for survival, but for freedom. Black men rushed to enlist. Over 180,000 served in the Union Army. They fought with courage. They faced death not only from bullets, but from execution or re-enslavement if captured. Yet they fought. For their people. For dignity. For the future. The Confederacy hoped for help from Europe. They believed cotton would bring them allies. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, Britain and France stepped back. They would not support a war for slavery. The war continued to drag on. The South's resources dried up. Its men were exhausted. Grant pushed forward with relentless pressure. He understood that victory would come not just through strategy, but through attrition. In 1865, Union forces captured Richmond, the Confederate capital. Robert E. Lee tried to escape west. But his army was surrounded. On April 9, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, he surrendered to Grant. Just 5 days later, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Shot in the back of the head at Ford's Theater. He did not live to see the peace he had fought for. The South lay in ruins. Cities were burned. Fields left fallow. Millions of people were dead, wounded, orphaned, or traumatized. Slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment. But freedom did not bring equality. Racism remained deeply rooted. Reconstruction began, but it was slow, violent, and fiercely resisted. 1 in every 4 Southern white men of military age had died. Entire communities were wiped out. Tens of thousands of men returned home with missing limbs. Many were never whole again, in body or mind. And the country remained deeply divided. The American Civil War ended on paper, but its consequences are still unfolding. This war forced America to reckon with its original sin. It tore off the mask. It exposed every contradiction. And it demanded that the country choose what it truly believed in. The cost was staggering. But the future was bought with that price. Not all battles are fought with guns, and not all wounds are visible. This was the war that forged modern America, and the memory of it must never fade. Please like, share and subscribe if you believe in telling the truth behind history. This is the American Civil War. And this is the story that must be remembered. In the beginning, there were no borders, no passports, no races, no languages, just people. Homo sapiens. One species, one ancient family. Born not in a country, but in the cradle of East Africa. 200,000 years ago, they walked upright. They hunted. They loved. They feared the dark. They looked to the stars, even if they did not have words for them. But the earth is vast, and humans wander. They migrated north. They chased game. They chased seasons. They crossed deserts. They climbed mountains. They built boats and found new islands. Every place changed them. Not in spirit, but in body. In the bright sun of the equator, dark skin protected them, a shield against ultraviolet rays. In the cold grey skies of the north, paler skin evolved to soak in every drop of sunlight. Noses narrowed to warm the air, hair coiled to cool the scalp. Bones shifted. Eyes adapted. Generations passed, and nature sculpted us. But race is not ancient. It is not scientific. It is not written in stone. Race is a story told by empires, by colonizers, by people who wanted to divide, because biologically, humans are almost the same. More similar than wolves, more similar than apes. There is only one human race. We just wear different skin. But something else was changing too. Something powerful and invisible. Language. At first it was sound. A grunt. A cry. A warning. Then rhythm. Then meaning. Then explosion. Clicks. Tones. Songs. Words. Language bloomed. It spread. It multiplied. It became over 7,000 forms of saying, I am here. I am alive. How did that happen? As we spread out, we changed how we spoke. We gave names to rivers. We told stories about stars. We described pain. We made poetry. Small groups created dialects. Dialects became languages. Languages became cultures. Words became legacy. But like race, language is not fixed. It moves. It evolves. It dies. It is born again. English is a good example. It is Germanic. It is Latin. It is French. It is Norse. It is messy. and it is everywhere. Language built everything. Laws, books, memories, songs, myths, promises. But if language is how we speak, and race is how we look, then humanity is how we feel. Joy, pain, hope, grief. These do not need translation. From Ethiopia to Iceland, from Mongolia to Brazil, from deserts to ice, from temples to cities, we all cry the same. We laugh the same. We bury our dead the same. We are not strangers. We are reflections. So if you ask, why do we look so different? Why do we speak in so many ways? The answer is simple. We adapted. We survived. We changed. But we never stopped being one. We are the children of Earth, written in 7,000 languages, painted in every color, lived by 8 billion souls, still one. Hit like if you enjoyed this, sub to see more, share to support the channel.
Ever had a conversation with yourself in the shower? Congratulations. You're using the most complicated storytelling machine in the known universe. That little voice in your head? It's not you. It's just your consciousness trying to make sense of the chaos. Scientists still don't fully understand what consciousness is. But they agree on one thing. It's super weird. Your brain creates a reality for you, then believes it, then argues with itself about it, all while trying to remember where you left your keys. Oh, and that voice inside your head? It's silent when you read in another language, unless you're faking the accent. Consciousness lets you question reality, invent memes, overthink texts, and wonder if that cashier secretly judged your snacks. You're not just self-aware. You're self-aware that you're self-aware, which is weird, but also kind of beautiful. And yes, your consciousness wrote this short, about itself, while watching itself read it. The Human Brain, a real-time sitcom with no laugh track, and a lot of anxiety. Like and follow for more hilarious facts about your weird little mind.
Humans are the only animals that blush, which means we're also the only ones with built-in lie detectors. On our face. You can't hide guilt when your cheeks light up like a microwave burrito, heating from the inside. No other animal does this. Not dogs. Not chimps. Not even those judgmental cats who clearly feel nothing. And while we're at it, we're also the only species that says, I'm fine, with the emotional stability of a raccoon in a dumpster fire. So yeah, we blush. We're complicated, weird, and wildly overcooked evolution soup. Hit the like button if your face has ever betrayed you. Subscribe for more weird facts. And hey, sharing is caring.
The average cloud weighs over 1 million pounds. That's right, that innocent-looking puff. Throughout history, war has taken many forms. But perhaps no kind of battle tests the human spirit more than a siege. Trapped within walls, cut off from food, hope, and reinforcements. A siege is not just a battle of weapons, it is a battle of patience, fear, and survival. These are the greatest sieges in history. The Siege of Troy, the Greeks versus the Trojans. It began with the abduction of Helen, and it lasted 10 years. The Greeks laid siege to Troy in a campaign filled with duels, deception, and death. Legends say it ended with the famous Trojan horse, a gift left at the city gates, hiding Greek soldiers within. When night fell, Troy was betrayed from the inside and burned to the ground. The Siege of Babylon, the Persians versus the Babylonians. Cyrus the Great of Persia faced one of the most fortified cities in the world. Babylon's walls were tall, wide, and guarded by the Euphrates River. But Cyrus diverted the river and marched his army through the dry bed at night. The city fell without a fight. It was one of the most brilliant siege tactics in ancient history. The Siege of Syracuse, the Greeks and Carthage combined versus the Roman Republic. During the Second Punic War, the Roman Republic attacked the Greek city of Syracuse. But the defenders had a secret weapon, Archimedes. The great inventor created catapults, mirrors, and defensive machines to hold off the Romans for nearly 2 years. Eventually, the city fell, and Archimedes was killed by a Roman soldier, despite orders to keep him alive. The Siege of Masada, Zealots versus the Roman Empire. In the deserts of Judea, a group of Jewish rebels held out against the Roman Empire atop a desert plateau. The Romans built a massive ramp over months to breach the fortress. But when they arrived, they found silence. Nearly 1,000 defenders had taken their own lives rather than be captured. It remains one of the most haunting sieges in history. The Siege of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire versus Persians. The capital of the Byzantine Empire was tested more than once. In 717 it held firm against Arab forces. But in 1453 it faced the full force of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed II brought cannons, including the massive bombard that shattered the Theodosian walls. After 53 days, Constantinople fell. The city became Istanbul, and the medieval era came to an end. The Siege of Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs versus the Spanish conquistadors. In the heart of modern-day Mexico, Hernán Cortés led Spanish forces against the Aztec capital. With the help of native allies and aided by disease, the Spanish laid siege to the island city. The canals turned red. Famine and smallpox ravaged the defenders. After 93 days, the Aztec Empire collapsed. The Siege of Vienna, Austrians versus the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire reached the gates of Europe's core. Vienna was surrounded. But a massive relief force led by Polish King Jan Sobieski launched the largest cavalry charge in history. The siege was broken. It marked the high water mark of Ottoman expansion into Europe. The Siege of Leningrad, Nazi Germany versus the Russians. Nazi Germany surrounded the Soviet city of Leningrad for nearly 900 days. In the freezing cold, over 1 million civilians died from starvation, shelling, and disease. Yet the city never surrendered. It was one of the longest and most tragic sieges in modern warfare. The Siege of Stalingrad, Nazi Germany versus Russians. Stalingrad wasn't a siege by walls, but by sheer destruction. Germany's Sixth Army pushed deep into the Soviet Union. But Soviet forces refused to break. Urban warfare took over, room by room, floor by floor. Eventually, Germany's army was surrounded and forced to surrender. It was the turning point of World War II. The Siege of Dien Bien Phu, Vietnamese versus the French. In the jungles of Vietnam, French forces set up a base at Dien Bien Phu. They believed they were safe, but the Viet Minh surrounded them in the hills and brought in heavy artillery. After 57 days, the French surrendered. It marked the end of French colonial rule in Indochina and the rise of the Vietnam War. The Siege of Sarajevo, Bosnia Civil War. In the Bosnian War, the capital city of Sarajevo was trapped for almost 4 years. Snipers targeted civilians. Artillery rained down on homes, schools and hospitals. More than 10,000 people died, many of them children. It was the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare. Sieges are not always won by force. Sometimes they are won by will, by the refusal to surrender, by hope that holds out even when the walls begin to crumble. From ancient stone cities to modern skylines, sieges have shaped the course of human history. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to see future content. Sharing is caring.
Sea otters have a nightly ritual. Before they go to sleep, they find another otter and hold hands. Isn't that awesome? So they don't float away from each other in their sleep. They literally make little otter chains, like a fuzzy aquatic cuddle cult. Meanwhile, you can't even get a text back. These little sea potatoes are emotionally healthier than most humans. They're soft. They're loyal. And they nap like it's an Olympic sport. Honestly, we don't deserve them. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to see more. Sharing is caring.
Dogs can literally smell your emotions. They detect changes in your sweat like little furry chemists on patrol. So when you're feeling anxious, heartbroken, or spiraling at 2 a.m. because of a text that shattered your soul, your dog already knows. While you ugly cry on the kitchen floor with mascara running and one sock on, your dog is beside you like a loyal emotional support potato. They're not judging. They're not confused. They're just chilling next to you, sniffing your sadness and thinking about snacks. And despite the chaos you radiate, they still love you more than any ex ever did. That's not just love. That's a ride-or-die fur missile with sniff-based emotional intelligence. You should probably give them a steak, or at least a belly rub. Follow for more weirdly true facts your dog probably already knows. Saturn is the second biggest planet in our solar system. It has rings made of ice, moons with oceans, and it's so light it could float in a giant bathtub. No, seriously, if you had a pool big enough. Saturn would just bob on the surface like a beach ball at a barbecue. It's made mostly of hydrogen and helium, basically space balloon material. Meanwhile, Earth would sink like a rock. So congratulations. You now know the most majestic planet in our solar system is also a floater. Planetary bubble bath, anyone? Now picture aliens doing cannonballs into it. Because I can't unsee it now. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to see future videos. Sharing is caring. Once upon a time in old Europe, people started dying mysteriously and in large numbers. And the explanation, according to many, was not disease or bad sanitation. It was vampires. Yes, vampires. Dead people rising from the grave, sneaking into homes and draining the life from their neighbors. This wasn't just folklore whispered around campfires. Entire villages believed it. So did nobles, priests, and even doctors. The symptoms they saw: pale skin, weight loss, coughing up blood. Today we call that tuberculosis. Back then it was textbook vampire behavior. So what did they do about it? They grabbed shovels, marched to the graveyards and started digging people up. Once they opened a coffin, the body was judged on appearance. If it wasn't decomposing fast enough, that meant it was undead. Sometimes the stomach was bloated or there was blood at the mouth. Instead of realizing that these were normal signs of decomposition, they assumed the corpse had been feeding. So they acted. They removed hearts, cut off heads, drove stakes through chests, shoved garlic in mouths, and occasionally they poured boiling wine over the body for good measure. Because clearly vampires hate hot drinks. In some cases, they ground up the heart into ashes and made the family drink it. Because if Grandma's dying, the logical solution is to make her sip vampire dust. Medical science was still on vacation. One of the most famous cases happened in 1725 in Serbia. A man named Petar Blagojevich died, and soon after, 9 others followed. Locals said Petar had returned from the dead and attacked them. When they opened his grave, they claimed he looked too fresh and had blood on his lips. So they staked him and burned the body. The story spread across Europe, causing full-on vampire hysteria. Even the church stepped in, not because of the grave digging, but because vampires didn't fit the religious narrative. The church believed the dead should stay dead or wait peacefully for resurrection. Rising from the grave to bite your cousin didn't fit the theology. Eventually, science caught up. Doctors realized that tuberculosis, decomposition, and poor hygiene were to blame, not the undead. But by then, the vampire myth had taken hold. In 1897, Bram Stoker published Dracula and changed everything. Now, vampires had class. They wore capes, lived in castles, and made being undead look kind of cool. Fast forward to today. Vampires star in movies, TV shows, novels, video games, and Halloween costumes. They sparkle, smolder, and occasionally sell car insurance. But the truth behind their origin, it's a panic that came from fear, misunderstanding, and a complete lack of germ theory. So are vampires real? No. But the panic was. The superstition was. People truly believe this stuff. And that belief shaped part of our history. If you enjoyed this, hit like. Subscribe to see future videos. And share to support the channel. Because knowing things is power. Ever heard of glow in the dark? Yeah? Well, humans basically do that. No joke. Our bodies emit a tiny amount of visible light, like actual photons. You're low-key a nightlight. It's called bioluminescence, but humans are just the worst at it. We glow about 1,000 times weaker than your eyes can see. Scientists used ultra-sensitive cameras. And boom, glowing humans. Brightest at the face. Like your forehead's throwing a tiny rave. Why do we glow? Because of chemical reactions in our cells. Oxygen meets enzymes, photons happen. Nature's way of saying you lit. So yeah. Humans, technically glowing, tragically boring to look at. Next time someone says you're glowing, just say, "Thanks, I've got oxidative stress." Like, share, and subscribe for more weird facts that light up your brain.
You thought The Last of Us was fiction? Meet cordyceps, the actual fungus that turns ants into zombies. Not cute cartoon zombies. We're talking full mind control horror movie levels of creepy. This fungus infects an ant, then hijacks its brain like... Hey buddy, let's go climb a leaf and die dramatically. And the ant actually does it. It climbs, it bites the leaf, it freezes there. Then the fungus explodes out of its head. Yes, out of its freaking head. Like some nightmare plant alien with bad intentions. And just when you think it's over, it rains spores on the ant's friends like, tag, you're infected. Tag, you're infected. Science calls this host manipulation. I call it nature's most disturbing known project. The worst part? It's real. And it's still out there. But hey, at least it's not in humans. Yet. If that blew your mind, hit like. Want to see more weird, real stuff? Tap subscribe. And if you really want to help, share this with someone who's scared of mushrooms.
Sharks are older than trees. Not just by a little, by about 90 million years. These ocean monsters showed up around 450 million years ago, back when Earth was still trying to figure out if it wanted legs, lungs, or lava. Mother Earth ended up choosing all three. Sharks have survived 5 mass extinctions, including the one that KO'd the dinosaurs. They don't have bones, just cartilage armor. Basically skeletons made of nose material. But somehow still scarier than a T-Rex with a chainsaw. And their teeth. Sharks can lose and regrow over 30,000 teeth in a lifetime. These guys were roaming Earth's oceans before birds, flowers, and even insects were a thing. So yeah, next time you see a shark, show some respect. You're looking at a prehistoric boss who outlived the dinosaurs and is literally older than your mum's houseplants. If you learned something, hit that like button. Subscribe for more wild facts. And share to support the channel.
They say heaven has streets of gold, but that's just the beginning. According to ancient texts, there's a city made of crystal, and gates carved from pearl, and a throne surrounded by fire, light, and creatures with wings full of eyes. Some say there are gardens beneath which rivers flow, palaces that shimmer like stars, a light that never fades, and music that doesn't just play, it lives. In the book of Revelation, heaven isn't just peaceful, it's overwhelming, glorious, terrifying, holy. And different cultures describe it differently, but one thing is always the same. It's beautiful beyond words. Would you want to see it? The full video drops soon. Like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic stories that explore the unknown.
In the final days of World War II, as the world burned and then began to rebuild, one man remained hidden in the shadows of the Philippine jungle, a soldier who refused to surrender because in his heart the war was not over. His name was Hiru Onoda. A lieutenant in the Imperial Japanese Army, trained in intelligence and survival, he was ordered to hold his ground on Lubang Island, no matter how long it took. Retreat was not an option. Surrender was forbidden. Death was preferable to dishonor. When the war officially ended in 1945, millions celebrated peace. But Onoda never got the message. Leaflets were dropped. Loudspeakers called out. Newspapers were left behind. He thought it was all enemy propaganda. In his mind, the fight still raged on. For years, he evaded capture, living in the dense jungle, surviving on bananas, coconuts, and stolen rice, making traps, hiding in the mountains, engaging in gunfire with locals, He became a ghost story, part myth, part menace, part miracle. Decades passed. The world changed. Japan rose from the ashes. The Cold War ignited. Man walked on the moon. And still, Hiroo Onoda remained in the jungle, believing he was still a soldier of war. It wasn't until 1974, nearly 30 years after Japan surrendered, that a young Japanese traveler named Norio Suzuki set out to find him, not to arrest him, not to capture him, but to listen to him, to honor his story, to bring him home. But even then, Onoda refused to surrender. Not without orders from his commanding officer. That officer had long since returned to civilian life. But the Japanese government tracked him down, now an elderly bookseller, and flew him to Lubang Island. Standing face to face with his former superior, Hiroo Onoda finally accepted the truth. The war had ended. He removed his uniform, polished his sword, and after 29 years in hiding, saluted the rising sun one final time. He returned to Japan as a national hero, celebrated by some, questioned by others, revered by all who heard his unbelievable story. Onoda's tale is not just about war. It's about duty, belief, honor, and the power of a human being to endure beyond reason. In a world that
At just 17 years old, Juliane Köpke boarded a flight with her mother on Christmas Eve, 1971. Somewhere over the Peruvian rainforest, the plane was struck by lightning and disintegrated mid-air. Juliane was thrown from the aircraft, still strapped to her seat. She plummeted over 10,000 feet, nearly 2 miles, into the dense jungle below. But she survived. Injured, barefoot and alone, she wandered the rainforest for 11 days. She followed streams, avoided predators, and treated her wounds with knowledge she had learned from her zoologist parents. Despite broken bones, insect bites, and no supplies, she kept moving. Eventually, she found a logging camp and was rescued. Juliane was the only survivor out of 92 passengers. She fell from the sky and walked out of the jungle alive. Like the video if you found this to be amazing. For more unbelievable true stories, hit subscribe and check out our full documentary series.
The Wild West wasn't built with rules. It was carved out of chaos, grit, and the promise of something better, even if it killed you. It began with a gun in one hand and a dream in the other. Millions moved west, chasing gold, land, or freedom. What they found was a land untamed, where the law came second to survival, and every sunrise might be your last. Outlaws roamed like wolves, armed, hunted, and unafraid. Jesse James wasn't born evil. He was made by war. As a teenager, he fought in brutal guerrilla units during the Civil War. Afterward, he led a gang that robbed banks, trains, and anything else that moved. But Jesse didn't run. He wrote letters to newspapers justifying every heist. The people didn't see a criminal. They saw a modern Robin Hood. He was betrayed by his own gang, shot in the back of the head while adjusting a picture on the wall, by a man who wanted the reward money more than his loyalty. Billy the Kid was lightning in a human body. He danced between jail cells and gunfights, charming some and terrifying others. He spoke fluent Spanish, sang to children, and smiled before drawing on grown men. He once broke out of a 2-story courthouse by killing both his guards and riding off on a stolen horse. His luck ran out in the dark. Sheriff Pat Garrett waited in the shadows and put a bullet through him before he even knew what hit him. He was 21, 1 kill for every year he lived. But legends weren't just born with bullets. Bass Reeves was a name history nearly buried. Born into slavery, he escaped, lived among native tribes, and taught himself to track like a ghost. He became the first black U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi. He couldn't read, but he memorized over 3,000 warrants, and he brought them in alive or dead. They say he once arrested his own son for murder. Because out here, justice didn't care about blood. The women of the West were harder than the land they walked. Calamity Jane rode through fire and madness, drank with generals, and fought off Indian attacks with a rifle in one hand and a cigarette in the other. She never married Wild Bill Hickok, but she never stopped loving him. She asked to be buried beside him. She was. Stagecoach Mary broke noses and rules. She delivered mail through blizzards and bandit country. She drank whiskey, chewed cigars, and carried a shotgun under her skirts. When one man called her slow, she knocked out his teeth. The town cheered. Even Belle Starr, the bandit queen, rode with Jesse James and ruled a gang of her own. She wore velvet gowns to court and pistols to dinner. She was murdered on a dirt road, and to this day no one knows who pulled the trigger. And then there was love. The Wild West was brutal, but love still bloomed in saloons, train cars, and tents on the edge of nowhere. Gunfighters wrote poetry. Cowboys whispered dreams under starlit skies. One outlaw, Harry Alonzo Longabore, better known as the Sundance Kid, fell so deeply in love with a schoolteacher, he took her across the world to escape the law. They fled to South America. They died in a shootout in Bolivia. Together. Love didn't soften the West. It made the pain worth surviving. Towns like Deadwood, Tombstone, and Dodge City weren't just backdrops. They were pressure cookers. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Wild Bill Hickok walked the tightrope between order and anarchy. The OK Corral shootout lasted just 30 seconds, but it turned into legend. 3 men killed, dozens of lives changed. That's the West. Blink, and your whole world changes. The California Gold Rush brought 300,000 people stampeding westward in search of fortune. Most left with nothing. Some died with gold in their pockets and a knife in their back. And yet, people kept coming. The Transcontinental Railroad stitched the continent together like a wound being sewn shut. But it was built on the backs of immigrants, Chinese workers, Irish laborers, freed slaves. Whole mountains were blasted apart. Towns appeared overnight. Where the train went, civilization followed. And with it, the end of the true Wild West. By 1890, the US Census declared the frontier closed. But the truth is, it never died. The West didn't vanish. It evolved. The grit, the rebellion, the romance, it still runs in American blood. In every underdog, every fighter, every wild heart that refuses to be tamed. The Wild West isn't gone. It's just waiting for the right kind of soul to ride again. If this stirred something in you, like the spirit of the frontier calling across time, smash that like button. Subscribe for more true legends, forgotten heroes, and raw, untamed history that Hollywood could never tell you. They don't teach this in school. They won't mention her in pirate movies. But the greatest pirate to ever live wasn't a man. Her name was Qing Shi. And she ruled the South China Sea with more power than most kings. Born in 1775 in Canton, she started life in a brothel. By the age of 32, she controlled the most feared pirate fleet in history. Her rise began when she married Zheng Yi, a feared pirate captain commanding the Red Flag Fleet. They ruled together for 6 years, conquering rival clans and expanding their influence. But when he died during a storm in 1807, chaos threatened to consume the empire they built. That's when Qing Shi took command. She didn't inherit the fleet, she secured it. By forging alliances, bribing key lieutenants, and marrying Zheng Yi's adopted son, she ensured full control. This wasn't luck. It was power politics, pirate style. She restructured the entire pirate confederation. 6 fleets, red, black, white, blue, yellow and green, all answered to her. Each had its own admiral, but she commanded them all. She introduced one of the most brutal and effective pirate codes ever written. It enforced order where chaos once ruled. Under her, piracy became an organized business, efficient, ruthless, and terrifying. Her fleet grew to over 800 warships and 80,000 pirates. They attacked imperial convoys, seized merchant vessels, and collected protection money from entire coastal villages. She demanded tribute from major ports. If they refused, she destroyed their ships, burned their docks, and left no survivors. She defeated the Chinese Navy in open water, not once but several times. One legendary clash at the Pearl River Delta saw her fleet smash through a blockade of imperial warships, stealing their cannons and setting fire to their sails. The Qing government begged help from Portugal and Britain. Gunboats arrived. They failed. Qing Shi's tactics were unmatched. She used shallow draft ships to escape into coves where larger vessels couldn't follow. She faked retreats, then ambushed pursuing enemies. And she was a master of timing, striking during storms when defenders were weak. Her pirates once raided a salt monopoly warehouse, seizing the entire seasonal supply, then reselling it back to the government at a profit. She didn't just rob. She controlled markets. No one was safe. Fishermen, merchants, nobles, even tax collectors were forced to pay her tribute. She also expanded inland, controlling smuggling routes and punishing towns that resisted. Entire villages relocated to avoid her wrath. But her most surprising move wasn't violence. It was diplomacy. By 1810, the Qing dynasty was desperate. They offered her a full pardon, but she negotiated better. She walked into the Governor-General's palace with her top lieutenants unarmed. She demanded amnesty for her fleet, retention of their wealth, and official military jobs for her officers. She got it all. No execution. No prison. No betrayal. Just total victory. She retired with her fortune, opened a gambling house, and became a respected businesswoman. She raised a family. She lived until the age of 69, something nearly unheard of for pirates. She died peacefully. And history buried her under silence. But the facts remain. She commanded the largest pirate fleet ever recorded. She beat empires, outmaneuvered navies, and walked away untouched. Her name was Qing Shi. If you learned something new, hit like. Subscribe for more untold history. And share this. They traveled light years, crossed galaxies, bent time itself. Everybody out here yelling, "Occupy!"
Earth's core is hotter than the surface of the sun, but it's been burning for over 4.5 billion years. So why hasn't it cooled off? It all started with chaos. When Earth formed, massive space rocks collided and melted everything through pure violence. That initial heat never left, but gravity made things worse. The deeper you go, the more pressure, squeezing the core like a nuclear pressure cooker. And here's the wildest part. The core is radioactive. Elements like uranium and thorium are decaying, releasing constant heat from deep inside. All of that keeps Earth's core burning like a cosmic furnace. It's why volcanoes erupt, tectonic plates shift, and our planet stays alive. Earth is basically a giant baked potato with a nuclear heart, like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see future videos just like this one.
Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy.
Before man, before cities, before even the first bird's song, Earth belonged to giants, a world lush with towering ferns, volcanic mountains, and endless swamps teeming with life that time forgot. The skies roared with the wings of pterosaurs, vast and alien, gliding through air thicker and richer than ours today. Beneath them, dense jungles pulsed with ancient sounds, chirps, hisses, bellows, from creatures no human would ever see. Among the trees walked the mighty triceratops, armor-plated and regal, grazing like armored cattle on primeval shrubs. Across the plains, herds of Apatosaurus stretched like living towers, their necks rising above the canopy to feast on treetops no other creature could reach. But not all was peace in this lost world. Lurking in the shadows, velociraptors stalked their prey with chilling precision. Fast, cunning, coordinated. Every leaf rustle could mean death. Every breeze carried the scent of something ancient and hungry. And above them all, the undisputed king, Tyrannosaurus Rex, thundered through the land with jaws strong enough to crush bone and a gaze that froze everything in its path. Yet even he was not alone in the hunt. The oceans hid terrors of their own. Mosasaurus, the marine giant, waiting in prehistoric seas that shimmered with alien blues and bioluminescence. From desert cliffs to mist-choked valleys, Earth was a mosaic of untamed beauty and brutal survival. Giant insects buzzed through the air, wings like stained glass windows flashing under prehistoric sun. Enormous crocodilian ancestors lurked in the shallows, their eyes just above the waterline, motionless, until they weren't. The land itself was alive. Volcanoes rumbled like sleeping beasts, reshaping the world with every eruption. Ash blanketed entire forests, preserving the bones of those who once ruled. Every footprint left behind was a story, one of survival, of instinct, of evolution in its rawest form. This wasn't just a time of monsters, it was nature's boldest experiment, each creature perfectly engineered for its moment in time, battling extinction with every breath. Tiny Compsognathus darted between roots, scavengers with sharp eyes and sharper teeth, while high above, Quetzalcoatlus, with a wingspan wider than a fighter jet, soared between prehistoric thermals. Forests glowed with flora long extinct, cycads, ginkgos, horsetails taller than men. The air was thick with moisture, pollen, and the constant noise of life in motion. Massive Stegosaurus lumbered across hot plateaus, their spiked tails ready for war. Even the night brought fear, the calls of nocturnal predators echoing through the dark. Some dinosaurs were armored like tanks, like the Ankylosaurus, dragging its clubbed tail like a mace. Others were built for speed, like the Gallimimus, racing through fields at over 40 miles an hour. Climate shaped evolution. Droughts came, floods followed. Entire species vanished as others adapted or died. Through it all, Earth spun on, writing its history in claw marks and fossil beds. Then came the Skyfire, a rock from space, a moment of extinction. Darkness swept the globe. Plants died. Temperatures plunged. The reign of dinosaurs was over, but their legacy would live on. In the bones beneath our feet, in the birds above our heads, and in the stories we tell of a world before time, a world of wonder, of terror, of breathtaking.
The earth basks in the sun's light.
The Ice Age was like nature's way of saying, hope you like snow. Forever. Cavemen didn't have central heating, winter coats, or even socks. They had mammoth fur, fire, and the power of stubborn complaining. Their shelter was a cave shared with bears, bats, and Greg. Greg snored and wouldn't help gather any firewood. Dinner was frozen mammoth. They ate it raw, half-cooked, or just licked it until it thawed. And Greg, he licked it like a caveman, but dreamed of salt and pepper like a 5-star chef. Entertainment. Drawing stick animals on walls and arguing over whose buffalo looked better. To stay warm, they huddled together. Not for love, for body heat. And because the smell scared off wolves, but somehow they made it. No phones. No Netflix. Just grit, mammoth grease, and bad hair. If that's not impressive, you try surviving a blizzard in a fur diaper. If this made you laugh, hit like, subscribe for more funny history, and share it before the next Ice Age hits.
They called them savages. Beasts from the ice-choked north. But what sailed from Scandinavia wasn't chaos, it was precision. Row upon row of hardened warriors, faces carved by cold winds, eyes set on glory. When the longships breached foreign shores, history bent beneath their oars. From the fjords of Norway to the burning monasteries of Lindisfarne, the Viking Age was baptized in fire. But they were not just raiders, they were poets, builders, lovers, and kings. Each raid told a story. Each conquest fed a legacy that no blade could erase. It began in the late 8th century. A single strike on English soil marked a turning point. Lindisfarne, 793. The Northumbrian monks never saw it coming. The sea had always protected them until now. The Vikings arrived like a storm with axes instead of thunder. Gold, relics, manuscripts, and blood soaked the ground. Europe awoke, trembling. But they did not stop with England. From the shores of Francia, where they would one day lay siege to Paris, to the Emerald Hills of Ireland, the Norse carved their mark. They founded Dublin with blood-stained hands and iron ambition, ruling the city as both tyrants and traitors. They came not just to take, but to stay. In the east, Swedish Vikings, Varangians, traveled the rivers of Russia. Some became kings. Others pledged themselves to Byzantium, earning renown as the feared Varangian Guard. Cloaked in steel and silence, they guarded emperors, far from the snows of their homeland. Back in the west, one name echoed louder than all, Ragnar Lothbrok. Whether man or myth, his legend moved armies. It is said he sailed across the North Sea, led daring raids across Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and laughed at death itself when captured by King Aella of Northumbria. They say snakes devoured him in a pit, but even that could not kill the legend. His sons would avenge him with fury unmatched. Hit that like button if you are enjoying the video, really helps to support the channel. The great heathen army descended upon England in 865, united not just by blood, but by wrath. Ivar the Boneless, a commander as ruthless as he was brilliant, carved through kingdoms, forging fear into loyalty. No one knew how he stood, yet all trembled when he moved. But with power came division. The sons of Ragnar fractured. Ivar would not live forever. And as Viking kingdoms rose, York in England, the Danelaw across Mercia, so too did betrayals. Brothers turned against brothers. Kings were crowned and dethroned with blades still warm. In Iceland, settlers carved farms from volcanic stone, chasing peace away from war. Yet even there, blood feuds burned hotter than lava. One man's honor could ignite years of vengeance. The sagas tell of love lost, oaths broken, and warriors choosing death over shame. To the south, the Vikings dared the Mediterranean. In 859, they raided the coasts of Spain, North Africa, and even reached Italy. But the sea was no ally here. Disease, heat, and unfamiliar shores weakened them. Still, they fought, for even in retreat, a Viking must die with pride. They ruled Normandy, not with axes, but alliances. The Frankish king granted land to Rollo, a Viking warlord, in exchange for peace. Rollo bent the knee, but never the will. His descendants would one day change Europe forever. One of them would be called William the Conqueror. But the Viking world, like all things, began to fade. Christianity seeped into their bones. Kings traded Odin's fury for the cross. The old gods were buried, not slain. Still, some resisted. Some clung to the ancient ways, fighting both crusaders and time itself. In 1066, one last roar shook the north. Harold Hardrada, a warrior king and former Varangian, sailed to claim the English crown. He died at Stamford Bridge, struck down before the Battle of Hastings would seal England's fate. With his fall, the Viking Age ended, not in surrender, but in a final, glorious stand. Yet their spirit never died. Their ships still haunt history's shores. Their names echo in our bloodlines. Their tales wrapped in ice and fire are told again and again. Not as villains. Not as myths. But as men who dared to shape the world with nothing but iron and will. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you'd like to see more, subscribe to see our future videos. Share if you'd like to support the channel. This is Dave. Dave made a mistake 27 years ago.
The sun rises over Rome. Not gently, not kindly. It blazes like a god's eye over blood-soaked sands and towering stone. In the shadow of palaces and temples, the city's heartbeat isn't found in poetry or politics. It's in the sound of chains clinking in the dark, as another gladiator wakes to survive another day. He's not born of nobility. He has no last name. He is one of thousands, slaves, criminals, and prisoners of war, forced into the arena for Rome's cruel entertainment. In the eyes of the empire, he is nothing more than flesh meant to fall. The day begins with brutality. Before food. Before rest. The Lannister barks orders as wooden swords crash into ribs, into jaws, into guts. Training isn't just pain. It's a science. Gladiators are drilled in dozens of combat styles. The secutor, built like a tank behind a rounded helmet and shield. The retiarius, fast and vicious, armed with a net and trident. Each role demands perfection. One misstep in the arena, and you're dead before the crowd can even gasp. Sweat soaks the sand. Men fall from exhaustion, not weakness. Because weakness doesn't survive in the ludus. Food is rationed for muscle. Oatmeal, barley, beans. A gladiator's diet is heavy, meant to build a layer of fat that slows bleeding when the blade strikes. Every inch of them is built for violence. But even in this hell, he finds her. A Thracian warrior. Not just a novelty to parade around. She's trained, deadly, scarred, and defiant. Gladiatrix. She fights like a storm in flesh. They met in the pit, neither yielding, both bleeding, until the doctor called it off. Since then, it's been something unspoken. Respect. Tension. And beneath it, something neither of them dares name. Love. But love here is dangerous. Even fatal. They're not allowed to choose who they live for, only who they kill. At night, the barracks are a graveyard of dreams. Some men speak of freedom, of winning the crowd's favor, of earning the rudies, the wooden sword that means liberation. But it's a lie whispered to keep hope alive. Less than 10% of gladiators ever tasted freedom. Most died before their third year in the arena. When the scroll is read the next morning, his name is called. His heart doesn't race. It slows. Because hers is called too. Paired. Together. Not as allies, but as enemies. The crowd will adore this. Love turned to blood, the ultimate show. The Colosseum isn't a place. It's a monster. Seated with over 50,000 people, it hungers for spectacle. Beneath its floors lie trapdoors, cages, and corpses. Animals are released. Fires are lit. Fates are sealed. He enters the arena, heart-pounding, face masked, sword heavy. She stands opposite him, radiant and brutal. Their eyes meet. There's no fear. Only understanding. One of them must fall. The crowd chants. The Emperor gestures. And the battle begins. They don't hold back. Every strike is real. Every dodge a decision between life and death. But behind the blows is something else. A rhythm, a code. They are telling a story the crowd doesn't understand. Lovers pretending to hate. Warriors refusing to die. He takes a knee, 2 fingers raised in the air. Missio it was called, yielding to his opponent, asking for her mercy. She slashes, close enough to draw blood, not death. The audience roars. They believe it. Believe she has won. But instead of finishing it, she turns and throws her sword into the sand. The silence is deafening. Then chaos erupts. Guards swarm the arena. Disobedience is punishable by death. But in that moment, he rises beside her. Two gladiators no longer playing their part. They fight. Not each other, the guards. Blades clash. Shields shatter. Blood paints the sand. It's madness. But for a few moments they are free, not slaves, not actors in someone else's story. They are warriors, choosing love over obedience. Choosing death on their feet over a life on their knees. It doesn't end in freedom. It never does. The Empire is a machine. And machine, but in the end they stood together. Defied fate. And for that, their names are whispered in corners of history. They didn't just survive the arena. They rewrote its rules. If this story moved you, like the video to keep its fire alive. Subscribe for more cinematic tales of forgotten legends and forbidden love. And share this with someone who believes even in darkness, we still choose who we fight for.
They called him Wojtek, a bear who wasn't just a mascot. He was a soldier. Adopted by Polish troops in World War II, he grew up in the barracks, drank beer from bottles, and would mimic the men, pretending to smoke cigarettes like one of the guys. But Wojtek wasn't just there for laughs. At the Battle of Monte Cassino, he carried live artillery shells to the front lines. Under fire, calm, fearless, just like the men beside him. So they made it official. Private Wojtek enlisted in the Polish Second Corps. When the war ended, he retired peacefully in a Scottish zoo. But the soldiers never forgot him. They visited often, bringing beer, sharing stories. Because to them, he wasn't just a bear. He was a brother, a comrade, a legend. Like, subscribe and follow Knowing Things is Power for more stories that make history come alive.
The sea was quiet, but her mind was not.
This really happened. They look like sci-fi, but
History wasn't just written in blood.
They say I was born with cherry blossoms in my hair. My name is Akiko. Daughter of Lord Katsuro. Samurai. Warrior. Father. To the world he is a blade. To me he is a storm. Every morning, I wake before the sun kisses the mountains. My feet touch the floor with reverence. My breath becomes a prayer. Before the world demands anything of me, I reclaim silence. I do not choose my clothing. I do not choose my meals. I do not choose my fate. But I have learned to master the spaces in between. The pauses. The looks. The things not said. The boys train with swords in the courtyard below. Their grunts echo like war drums. I watch from behind the paper screen, still invisible. They sweat. They bleed. When I was 10, I picked up a bokken and laughed. Father saw me, and the laughter died. He said, "Your hands are for teacups, not blood." But what of my heart, Father? What of my fire? At mid-morning, I walk the gardens with Lady Hannah. We speak of cherry blossoms, marriages, the weather. I nod. I smile. But beneath it, I dream of forests, of wind, of running so far no one can find me. And sometimes, I dream of him. The first time I saw him, he was sharpening his blade by the shrine. Torn robes. Old scars. No master. A Ronin. Father says they are shame-made flesh. But shame has never looked so human. He bowed, not as a servant, but as a man. And in that small moment, something ancient passed between us. Not love. Not yet. But recognition. At night, I write letters I will never send. To him. To the girl I am not allowed to be. To the gods who no longer answer. My mother's fan rests by my bed. Delicate. Beautiful. Breakable. just like she was. Dinner is served on silence. Father sits at the head of the table, his eyes heavy with disappointment he never voices. The servants glide like ghosts. I do not speak unless spoken to. I chew the rice and swallow the sorrow. But tonight, I sneak out. Soft steps. No sound. I meet him in the temple garden. And for the first time, someone looks at me like I am not property. He speaks of the northern provinces, of honor lost and found. I speak of duty in cages. He touches my hand and I don't pull away. Just for tonight, I am not Akiko the daughter. I am Akiko the woman. The next morning, the ink on my pillow is still wet. Father has read the letter I never meant to send. The house is quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that comes before storms. He does not shout. He does not strike. He simply tells me, "You will marry General Ito in spring. There will be no further disgrace." That night, I do not write. I pack a blade beneath my robes. Mother once told me, "The world will not be kind to a woman who chooses her own path." She was right. But kindness was never what I wanted. I leave before sunrise. I do not cry. I do not look back. Now I live by my own code. I travel village to village, healing, helping, watching. Some call me a ghost. Others call me a warrior. But I call myself free. I am no one's daughter now. I am no man's shadow. I do not ask for permission. I take my place in history. This was my life. A single day. If you felt something from this story, hit that like button. Subscribe to Knowledge is Power to see future videos. If you're hearing this, we didn't make it. The skies burned.
In a world where global powers rise and fall, one nation continues to cast a shadow across land, sea, air, space, and beyond. The United States of America commands the single most powerful military force the world has ever seen. In 2024, America's defense budget reached $997 billion. That's more than the combined military spending of China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, the UK, Germany, France, Japan, and South Korea combined. Nearly 40% of the entire planet's military budget belongs to the United States. This isn't just national defense, it's global dominance. Across the globe, the U.S. operates more than 750 military bases in over 80 countries. From Germany to Japan, from Guam to Djibouti, American boots, aircraft, and missile systems are already in place. These aren't symbolic outposts. These are real command centers, launch pads, hangars, war-ready installations capable of rapid response, surveillance, or full-scale conflict at a moment's notice. At sea, the U.S. Navy is unmatched. 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers serve as floating fortresses, each carrying up to 80 aircraft. No other nation has more than 2. Alongside them sail 9 amphibious assault ships, 92 guided missile destroyers, and a submarine fleet that can disappear beneath the ocean's surface and reappear anywhere in the world. In the skies, America rules with over 13,000 military aircraft. That includes over 1,800 fighter jets and more than 700 aerial tankers, giving U.S. forces the power to strike, refuel, and continue missions long after others would need to retreat. The F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II don't just dominate the air, they render enemy radar systems nearly useless. On land, the scale is equally overwhelming: 4,640 tanks, over 1,800 pieces of towed artillery, hundreds of rocket launcher systems, and more than 390,000 ground vehicles that range from armored troop carriers to advanced mobile command stations. Behind this machinery stands an army of over 1.3 million active duty personnel. Add another 800,000 in reserves. That's over 2 million trained warriors at the ready. Each soldier, sailor, airman, and marine is backed by the most sophisticated logistics network ever created, with weapons, gear, drones, satellites, fuel, and rations moving with machine-like precision across continents. And this isn't just about tanks and jets. The U.S. is investing heavily in future warfare, in space, cyberspace, and artificial intelligence. The newly activated U.S. Space Force monitors threats in orbit. Billions are being poured into space-based missile defense, satellite jamming technology, and next-generation communication networks. Cyber Command, operating in digital shadows, defends against intrusions and launches its own attacks, with tools as devastating as any missile. In comparison, China spends around $296 billion on its military. Russia? Just over $100 billion. And their global presence? A fraction of the reach America commands. Let's talk bullets. The U.S. produces and maintains over 2 billion rounds of small arms ammunition annually. Over 90,000 jet engines are in active service or reserve. Tens of thousands of drones patrol the skies. Surveillance drones, combat drones, reconnaissance systems, each with lethal efficiency. Then there's nuclear. The U.S. has around 5,244 nuclear warheads. Submarines, bombers, and intercontinental ballistic missiles stand ready with second strike capability, a deterrent so powerful it has defined global politics for generations. And when war breaks out, the U.S. can respond with overwhelming force in under 72 hours, anywhere on Earth. Aircraft carriers deploy, submarines vanish, drones launch, cyber teams activate. A global response unfolds like clockwork. This isn't just military strength, it's engineered supremacy, a layered defense, a global strike force, a machine built for any war, anywhere, anytime. And it's not slowing down. With new generations of hypersonic missiles, AI-driven battle systems, and robotic armor already in development, America's war machine is evolving. From deep ocean trenches to orbital space, from deserts to city streets, the reach is total. The message is clear. No nation can match it. No alliance can outspend it. And no threat can be ignored by it. This is the true scale of American military power. A force without equal. A reach without borders. A future defined by dominance. If this opened your eyes, Subscribe to our channel for more epic breakdowns of the powers shaping our world. And hit the bell, because what comes next, you won't want to miss.
He started as a stray, but in the trenches of World War I, he became a soldier. Stubby wasn't trained. He wasn't even supposed to be there. But the men of the 102nd Infantry loved him, so they smuggled him aboard the ship to France. On the battlefield, Stubby did more than bark. He warned of gas attacks, found wounded soldiers, and even caught a German spy sneaking into camp.
Yes, a dog captured a spy.
He chased him down and held on until help arrived. By the end of the war, he had survived 17 battles, earned the rank of sergeant, and came home a hero. He marched in parades, met US presidents, and became the most decorated war dog in American history. From stray to soldier, Sergeant Stubby was more than a mascot. He was family. Subscribe for more forgotten legends. Only on Knowledge is Power.
Before borders or bullets, this land thrived under the care of its First Nations. Over 500 tribes with more than 300 languages lived across the continent, from the towering pines of the Pacific Northwest to the sun-scorched mesas of the Southwest. Peace wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. It was a world of sacred rivers, sky dances, buffalo migrations, and unwritten laws held in honor, a civilization far older than the nation that would come to claim it. Then came ships, steel, and handshakes laced with betrayal. Treaties were offered with smiles and signed with lies, written in ink that faded when convenient. The colonists came preaching peace and brotherhood until they came with guns. What began with trade turned to bloodshed. The government carved up the land not with permission, but with force. And when paper wasn't enough, they used fire and fear to finish the job. In 1864, the Sand Creek Massacre shocked even hardened warriors. Cheyenne women and children were slaughtered as they waved white flags under a U.S. military promise of peace. It was called a victory by the newspapers. A cleansing. But to those who watched their families die, it was something else. The first death knell of 1,000 broken promises. The ghost dance came later, a desperate prayer, a sacred ritual meant to bring back the ancestors and return the land to balance. But Washington feared the rhythm of those drums. In 1890, at Wounded Knee, they answered with bullets instead of understanding. More than 250 Lakota were gunned down. The dead included women, children, and old men. Their bodies frozen in the snow were the final images of a century-long betrayal. And yet, even within confinement, love endured. Behind barbed wire and broken promises, a Sioux warrior fell in love with an Apache girl, a bond that defied tradition, distance, and the U.S. government's attempt to divide. Their love was rebellion. Their child, a silent protest against extinction. Then came the schools. Carlisle. Haskell. Calaco. Kill the Indian, save the man, they said. Generations of native children were stripped of their names, their languages, their hair, and their souls. What genocide could not finish, forced assimilation tried to erase. These schools were not places of learning. They were graveyards for identity. Still, the warrior spirit refused to die. In 1876, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse led the Lakota and Cheyenne to victory at the Battle of Little Bighorn. General Custer fell, along with his arrogance. It was not just a battle. It was the last thunderclap of resistance in a storm that had raged for centuries. The government never forgave the tribes for winning that day. The history books rarely remember it. And what of the women? Buffalo Calf Road Woman, who knocked Custer from his horse. Lozen, who rode with her brother Victorio and could predict the enemy's movements in dreams. Pine Leaf, a warrior who refused to marry, leading men into battle and earning more than 20 warriors' feathers. These were not women behind men, they were the thunder before the storm. From sea to stolen sea, tribal lands vanished on paper. Signatures forced by starvation, deceit, and the barrel of a gun erased over 86 million acres. Maps were redrawn, rivers renamed, cultures pushed underground. But they were never gone. They are still here. Still dancing, still speaking their tongues. Still passing on songs, stories, and scars. They are not relics. They are not folklore. They are not history. They are the heartbeat of this land. Subscribe to our channel for more truth. More beauty. More history they tried to bury. This is only the beginning.
Rome. The name still echoes like a war drum across time. It began with blood. Romulus murdering his twin Remus. The first betrayal. The first throne. And from that moment forward, betrayal became tradition. Rome rose from dirt and ambition. It became an empire that devoured the world. But not through peace, through war, seduction, strategy, and shadow deals. The Roman legions didn't just conquer, they engineered dominance. Roads that still exist, bridges stronger than modern steel, and war machines capable of crushing civilizations. But behind the armor were lives no history book dares to explore. While generals bathed in glory, slaves built the empires, cleaned the wounds, and shared the beds. The Roman war machine ran on a code: discipline, honor, sacrifice. Yet its greatest victories came from merciless efficiency. Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul led to over 1 million deaths and hundreds of thousands enslaved. When Vercingetorix, the great Gallic chieftain, surrendered, Caesar kept him in chains for 5 years before executing him in a Roman parade. That was mercy in Rome. Then came the Civil War, Caesar versus Pompey. Rome bled itself dry. The streets of Pharsalus flowed with Roman blood. Families turned on each other. Wives sent messages to assassins. Brothers fought in opposite legions. It was civil war in name only. It was slaughter for control. After Caesar's murder, the chaos didn't end. It simply shifted. Mark Antony, Cleopatra, Octavian. Love became a war tactic. Cleopatra seduced 2 Roman titans and nearly conquered Rome through silk and seduction. She bore Caesar a son. She made Antony abandon his duty. And when it all collapsed, they chose death over submission. The Battle of Actium ended it. Roman ships turned the sea red. Cleopatra's fleet burned, and her empire with it. Octavian became Augustus, the first true emperor. He created peace by destroying everyone who opposed him. That's what Rome called the Pax Romana, peace through absolute power. The emperors that followed were gods in flesh, or demons in disguise. Tiberius executed anyone who whispered against him. He filled his palace with treasures and things that cannot be discussed on YouTube. Caligula turned the palace into a brothel, named his horse a priest, ordered soldiers to collect seashells as spoils of war. Nero played the lyre while Rome burned. But he also built golden palaces and used Christian slaves as torches to light his gardens. Still, they were worshipped, because in Rome, image was everything. They called it virtus, virtue, but real Roman virtue meant power, fear, and legacy. Every war was recorded, every kiss between enemies remembered. every betrayal carved in marble. Love and loyalty were commodities, bought, traded, and sometimes destroyed. The Vestal virgins were supposed to remain pure, but one, named Licinia, fell in love with a consul. When discovered, she was buried alive. He was exiled. Their affair nearly triggered a riot. There were gladiators who loved noble women. One, a Thracian fighter named Spartacus, became a legend. He didn't just fight, he led a revolt of 70,000 slaves. Rome trembled. It took Crassus, one of the richest men in history, to defeat him. When Spartacus fell, 6,000 of his followers were crucified along the Appian Way, a road lined with corpses for miles. A warning carved in flesh. Rome's power stretched from Britain to Syria. They fought Persians, Germanic tribes, Numidians, Parthians, Egyptians, and they learned to use each of their enemies' strengths. And women. Roman generals often took lovers from conquered lands, not just for pleasure, but for intel, alliances, and control. Women like Boudica, queen of the Iceni in Britain, who rose after her daughters were violated. She led a rebellion that burned Roman cities to the ground. Rome nearly lost Britain. Or Zenobia of Palmyra, a queen who conquered Egypt and ruled as if she were a Roman herself. She spoke Latin, studied philosophy, and led armies. She was eventually paraded through Rome in chains. But her legend outlived the emperor who captured her. Women in Rome weren't powerless. They just played a different game. Livia poisoned rivals to make her son emperor. Agrippina seduced her own uncle Claudius and manipulated her way to becoming empress. She raised Nero, who later had her killed, fearing she was too powerful. Every family in Rome was a battlefield. Even love was a gamble of life or death. Some slaves who were loved were freed and became power players. Some lovers were set up as spies, and some romances, like that of Emperor Hadrian and Antinous, became divine legends. When Antinous drowned, Hadrian built statues across the empire. Cities bore his name. He became a god not for who he was, but for who loved him. Rome elevated love into legacy and weaponized it just as easily. But power corrupts, and emperors fell like dominoes. Commodus was strangled in his bath by a wrestler hired by his mistress. Caracalla was murdered while peeing on the side of a road. Elagabalus was hacked to death and thrown in the Tiber for his flamboyant rule and refusal to play Roman politics. Rome collapsed not in a single battle, but through decadence, betrayal, division, and arrogance. Invasions came, Huns, Goths, Vandals, but the empire was already dead in spirit, a corpse wrapped in gold. And still, Rome echoes. Its laws, its architecture, its betrayals. Every empire since has tried to imitate it. None have succeeded, because Rome was never just a city. It was an idea. A living god, a cult of ambition and seduction and blood. And behind its throne stood the forgotten. The slaves, the lovers, the warriors, the assassins. This is their story, Rome's real story. And now it's yours. If you're still watching, you know this isn't your average history lesson. You've just walked through the blood-soaked halls of power, love, and betrayal. You've seen Rome without the marble polish. So if you want more empires, more forbidden stories, more truths too bold for the classroom, then subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that like button and comment your favorite part of Rome's twisted legacy. In the spring of 1453, the greatest city in the world prepared to die. Constantinople, once the heart of the Roman Empire, now stood as a shining relic, surrounded by towering walls and fading prayers. Inside its churches, the faithful begged for salvation. Outside, the most powerful army the East had ever seen gathered under black banners and crescent moons. Sultan Mehmed II, barely 21, had come to carve his name into history, with gunpowder, steel, and blood. For centuries, the city had stood like a beacon, its golden domes and stone ramparts a symbol of civilization itself. Now it faced its final siege. But behind those walls, not all hearts beat in unison. The Byzantine court was fractured, broken by fear and whispers of betrayal. Among them was Helena Palaiologina, the emperor's niece, a diplomat, a poet, and secretly a spy. Helena had begun corresponding with a mysterious figure from the Ottoman side, Iskandar al-Rumi, an elite commander raised in both Greek and Turkish lands. What started as messages of diplomacy turned into something dangerous. They wrote of peace, and then of dreams, and then of each other. She saw a soldier who wanted more than conquest. He saw a woman willing to risk everything for something greater than either empire. The walls of Constantinople were ancient, but the weapons that faced them were not. Mehmed brought monstrous cannons, built by a Hungarian engineer, capable of smashing through stone once thought invincible. Day and night, the thunder echoed, and each morning, the defenders climbed bloodied ramparts to repel the next wave. Among them stood Giovanni Giustiniani, a famed Genoese mercenary commander hired to lead the defense. His armor gleamed, his tactics were ruthless, and his loyalty was for sale. Beside him fought his second-in-command, Alessandro Vero, a cold-eyed strategist with ambitions of his own. He watched Helena closely, not for protection, but for power. He had once loved her. Now he watched her drift toward Iskandar. And that could not be allowed. The siege raged for weeks. Ottoman ships, once blocked by chains across the harbor, were hauled over land and launched behind enemy lines. An act so bold, it broke the morale of many inside. Yet still the city held. Arrows fell like rain. Flames rose from towers. The cry of Allahu Akbar clashed with the pealing of Orthodox bells. Each night, Helena and Iskandar met in secret, their words exchanged by hidden riders or whispered across the shattered outer walls. Their love grew in the shadows of war, forbidden and fleeting. And above them, Alessandro plotted. On May 28th, with rations gone and morale crumbling, Emperor Constantine prepared for the final assault. He walked the streets in disguise that night, blessing his soldiers and weeping with his people. Some say he knew he would die. Others believe he hoped for a miracle. That same night, Helena vanished. Some believed she fled. Others claimed betrayal. In truth, Alessandro had followed her. He had found the meeting place, a ruined chapel near the outer gate, and waited. When Iskandar arrived, Alessandro struck first. Steel met steel. Helena screamed. They fought in silence as the stars burned overhead. Alessandro's blade cut deep, not into Iskandar, but into Helena, shielding the man she now loved. Iskandar roared, disarmed him, and nearly killed him, but couldn't. He fled into the night, carrying Helena's bleeding body in his arms. At dawn, Mehmed launched his final assault. The walls collapsed under cannon fire and sheer numbers. Giustiniani was wounded and abandoned the field, his men fleeing behind him. Emperor Constantine charged into the breach with sword in hand and was never seen again. The city fell. Churches were looted. The great Hagia Sophia turned into a mosque. Blood ran through the streets where prayers had once echoed. Helena died that morning in a hidden room beneath the palace. Iskandar never found her again. Some say he buried her secretly in the Garden of Emperors. Others believe he fled the city forever, broken and dishonored. Alessandro was captured by the Ottomans. Rather than kill him, Mehmed spared his life, impressed by his cunning. But Alessandro lived with a scar on his cheek and a wound in his soul. Sultan Mehmed II rode through the city that day in silence. He ordered his men to stop the destruction. He walked alone through the Hagia Sophia, now echoing with chants in a new tongue. And there, beneath its dome, he whispered a verse from the Quran about the rise and fall of empires. The fall of Constantinople ended the last true chapter of the Roman Empire. It reshaped the world, cutting Europe off from the east, sparking exploration and changing religion, politics, and power forever. But it was also a story of two hearts that met on opposite sides of a war and burned with a love the world was never meant to witness. Knowledge is power. Like if you learned something, subscribe to see new content and share to support the channel.
They did not fight for glory. They fought for belief, a belief so strong it demanded sacrifice, secrecy, and silence. Long before the world spoke of ninjas, there were the Hashashin, the original assassins of the Middle East. From deep within the Alborz mountains of Persia, in a fortress called Alamut, the old man of the mountain trained a legion of killers unlike anything the world had ever seen. Cloaked in mystery and sworn to death, They would become a nightmare whispered by kings, caliphs, and crusaders alike. At the heart of their legend was not just the blade, but the mind. The Hashashin were not butchers. They were surgeons of power. They would spend weeks, even years, studying a target. They would embed themselves as servants, scribes, merchants, even lovers. And then, when the moment struck, they would deliver their message with a single cut, often in public, always in silence. A message that no man, no matter how powerful, could hide from death. One of the earliest kills etched into history was the assassination of Nizam al-Mulk, the vizier of the mighty Seljuk Empire. He was cut down on the road by a man disguised as a wandering dervish. No shouts, no struggle, just steel and blood in the dust. But it would not end there. The Hashashin would strike again and again. Advisors, governors, warlords, even crusader commanders like Conrad of Montferrat, who fell in 1192 to a pair of young assassins posing as monks. He embraced them as holy men. He died with their daggers between his ribs. But among the shadows there were hearts still beating. Layla al-Khorasani, raised within Alamut's inner sanctum, was both blade and bait, a deadly fusion of beauty and precision. She could poison a goblet in front of a man and make him thank her for the wine. She had killed a Mamluk commander in his own bed, then wept over his corpse as if mourning a lover. But she had never truly loved, not until Khalid, the son of a Damascus noble, whose passion for poetry and politics drew her in like a flame. Her orders were clear: kill him. He was a sympathizer to the Crusaders, a traitor to the faith, a threat. But Layla hesitated. Their nights became long and tender. She told herself it was just a tactic until it wasn't. When word reached Alamut that she had failed to act, she was summoned back. But instead of punishment, she was given a new mission: kill Khalid and prove her loyalty. This time she obeyed. She entered his quarters one final time, whispered a poem he had written into his ear, and slid her blade beneath his ribs. But what the order had not counted on was what she found hidden in his chambers: a map, a plan. Evidence that Khalid was not betraying Alamut, but uncovering a plot against it. The real traitor was someone inside. Someone close to Hassani Saba himself. And so the game shifted. Layla disappeared from the ranks, but she did not go far. She hunted in secret. She found the betrayer, Farid al-Nasir, a high-ranking assassin who had been feeding information to the Seljuks for gold and favor. He had orchestrated Khalid's execution to cover his tracks. Layla killed him slowly, not for Alamut, but for herself. For Khalid. For the truth that had been buried beneath the lies. Meanwhile, the world outside continued to burn. The Hashashin's most daring moment came when they infiltrated the court of Saladin himself, the great Muslim general who had united Egypt and Syria. Twice they tried to kill him. Once they left a dagger on his pillow with a note, "We are closer than your breath." Saladin increased his guard. He did not sleep the same for the rest of his life. Other women, too, rose within the ranks. Zara of Tyre, who famously seduced a Crusader bishop and assassinated him during Mass with a blade hidden in a holy relic. Or Saria, who posed as a concubine to a Byzantine general, only to slaughter him during a banquet. Her escape recorded in stunned Greek scrolls as a ghost that wore perfume. They were not just assassins. They were symbols. The Hashashin weren't an army. They were a message. A message that no man, no matter how powerful, could rule by fear alone. Because fear could bleed. Eventually, the Mongols came. Hulagu Khan brought fire and siege engines to the mountains. In 1256, Alamut fell, its libraries burned, its leaders executed. But the fire didn't end there. The Hashashin had planted seeds in every kingdom, every court, every creed. And even as their fortress turned to ash, their legacy took root. Layla was never seen again. Some say she died at Alamut's gates, blade in hand, eyes on the horizon. Others say she lived, passing her teachings on to a new generation, a hidden line of assassins in the deserts, the palaces, the shadows of every empire that rose and fell after. Today we use the word assassin casually. But the truth is buried deep in those mountains. In blood, in silence, in the echo of a dagger's whisper. Before the ninja, before the spy, before the agent in a suit with a silenced gun, there were the Hashashin. And they were never just killers. They were believers. They were lovers. They were legends. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you would like to see more, hit that subscribe button. Share to support the channel.
In the year 1095, the cry of war shook the foundations of Europe. At the Council of Clermont, Pope Urban II summoned the faithful, urging them to take up the cross and reclaim the Holy Land. His voice thundered with divine fire. He promised remission of sins, eternal glory, and the chance to walk where Christ had walked. Across kingdoms and empires, lords, knights, and peasants alike answered the call. One of them was Elias of Rouen, a bastard knight with no inheritance, only a sword and ambition. He rode not for salvation, but for a name worth remembering. The crusade began not with banners, but with chaos. Peasant mobs marched first, ill-prepared and poorly led. They were slaughtered en masse by Turkish raiders before ever reaching Asia Minor. The real army followed, led by nobles like Raymond of Toulouse, Bohemond of Taranto, Godfrey of Bouillon, and others who mistrusted one another more than the enemy. In Byzantium, tensions flared. Emperor Alexios demanded oaths of loyalty before granting aid. Bohemond, ever the schemer, swore allegiance with a smile he didn't mean. In the shadows of Constantinople, Elias met Seraphine, a high-born Byzantine woman who defied protocol to tend to wounded crusaders. Their first meeting was brief, but her intelligence and fire haunted him long after they rode east. The march across Anatolia was hell. Heat scorched the land. Water was scarce. Turkish horsemen struck from the hills and vanished like ghosts. In Dorylaeum, the Crusaders were ambushed by Kilij Arslan's forces. The vanguard was nearly destroyed. Elias fought alongside Bohemond's men in the heart of the chaos, blood-soaked and battered, saving a wounded child who clung to his leg amidst the screams. Reinforcements arrived just in time. Victory came at a cost. Hundreds lay dead beneath the sun. Their armor melted to their bones. Infighting poisoned the crusade from within. Bohemond seized supplies meant for the whole army, forcing others to beg or steal. Raymond of Toulouse accused him of betrayal. A council was called, but no justice followed. Meanwhile, Elias discovered a secret. Baldwin of Boulogne, Godfrey's own brother, had abandoned his men and taken control of Edessa, carving out a personal kingdom. His betrayal would ripple across the crusade, a warning that the Holy War had become a game of thrones. The march to Antioch was marked by frost and starvation. When the Crusaders arrived, the city stood tall, defiant behind its towering walls. The siege began. Days turned into months. Food ran out. Men boiled leather for soup. One knight, mad from hunger, murdered his friend for a crust of bread. Within the camp, Isabel, Elias's sharp-witted sister disguised as a squire, uncovered a plot to sell secrets to the enemy. The traitor was a Flemish noble who had promised Antioch to the Fatimids in exchange for gold. Elias confronted him under torchlight, blade drawn. The traitor laughed, said, "You think this war is holy?" before Elias cut him down. His body burned in a pit, a warning to all. Hope faded. A priest claimed to find the Holy Lance beneath a church floor, guided by a vision from God. Bohemond saw an opportunity. He rallied the men with righteous fury, though some whispered he had planted the relic himself. With renewed zeal, the Crusaders stormed Antioch through a secret gate, bribed open by a local guard. The city fell in blood and fire. Streets ran red. Inside the chaos, Elias found Seraphine tending to both friend and foe. She had come alone against her father's wishes to serve those too broken to fight. Her courage seared itself into Elias's heart, a light in the darkness. But the siege was not over. Days later, Kerboga's vast army arrived. Now the Crusaders were the besieged, trapped inside the ruined city. Food ran dry again. Disease took more than the sword. Men abandoned hope. Bohemond refused to honor his oath to return Antioch to Byzantium. He declared himself prince of the city. Raymond opposed him, and the army split into factions. In secret, Bohemond offered Elias command of a battalion if he swore loyalty. Elias declined. His loyalty was to the mission, not a man. That night, someone set fire to the armory. Dozens burned. The traitor was never found. Inside a makeshift hospital, Layla, a captured Saracen healer, worked tirelessly to save the wounded. Isabel, recovering from a spear wound, grew close to her. Their bond formed in whispered words and stolen glances, in the quiet defiance of a war that wanted them enemies. When Layla was accused of poisoning the sick, a mob dragged her to the square. Isabel intervened, casting off her disguise and naming herself a noble of Rouen. Her authority held just long enough for Layla to escape, but not before Elias struck down one of the ringleaders. Their unity frayed, the Crusaders faced destruction from within, and yet they rallied. With the Holy Lance at the front and madness in their eyes, the Crusaders charged Kerboga's army. Against all odds, they broke the siege. The Muslim forces fractured and fled. Antioch was theirs, not by pity but by sheer brutality. The road to Jerusalem stretched long and broken. Along the way, the Crusaders retook towns they had once bypassed, including Ma'ara, where they butchered prisoners and, according to some, ate the flesh of their enemies in desperation. Elias did not partake. He wept for what they had become. Outside the city of Arca, another ambush waited. Muslim cavalry shattered the Crusader scouts. 100 men was lost. Bohemond refused to send aid, hoping to weaken Raymond's forces. Elias led a daring midnight raid into the enemy camp, rescuing survivors and striking a blow that turned the tide. The attack left him bloodied and near death, but in his fever he dreamed of Seraphine's face and awoke screaming, more determined than ever. By the time they reached Jerusalem in 1099, there was nothing left of the men who had begun the journey. The Crusaders built siege towers from dismantled ships dragged overland. Under a burning sun, they launched their final assault. Arrows darkened the skies. Boiling oil fell from the walls. Elias climbed with sword in hand, crying out not for God, but for the memory of every friend buried along the way. They broke through. The city fell. What followed was not war, it was annihilation. Muslims, Jews, even Eastern Christians were slaughtered. The air stank of death. Seraphine, who had snuck into the city with a group of nurses, found Elias collapsed in the temple courtyard, surrounded by corpses. He looked up and whispered, "We won," as if unsure it was true. Elsewhere, Isabel and Layla had fled the crusade entirely. They returned to Aleppo in secret, living as ghosts in a world that had no place for their story. But they endured, proof that love could survive even when empires crumbled. Jerusalem was captured. The crusade declared a triumph. Godfrey of Bouillon refused to be called king, naming himself defender of the Holy